our next two presenters, Noor Jones-Bey and Emeka Ekwelum, who are going to be guiding us through further exploration using the heart as an incredible metaphor for that, leaning into. So Noor Jones-Bey is a transdisciplinary educator, researcher, and artist from the Bay Area. She currently lives in Brooklyn, and where she's pursuing her PhD in urban education at the Steinhardt School. And she holds a fellowship from the Ford Foundation and the Urban Doctoral Research Initiative at New York University. Jones-Bey, Noor is a program director of Excel in NYU, a critical literacy and college access program for youth in the South Bronx. She's been a phenomenal educator, committed to youth development in many different settings and locations, and also supports professional development in many settings as well. And Emeka Ekwelum is a transnational multidisciplinary research educator, artist, and curator from Boston. He's currently living in Chicago, Illinois, where he's pursuing a PhD in Black Studies at Northwestern University. Emeka's scholarly and creative interests converge at the intersection of history, critical theory, creative expression, comparative ethnography, and current research projects examines the role of wonderment and contemporary and craft art collaborations between and amongst Black creatives.
So we're going to get started. And I think one of the ways that I love to get started is really just to ground back into our heart space. One of it is Amber started us reminding us again how when we move through the world, oftentimes we're thought to think of our body as a machine. So I want us to slow down in this moment, and we've been doing it beautifully throughout the day, but just starting again to find our heart. And in this moment, as you're finding your heart, I want us to think of our heart actually with a musical reference. The heart as drum. So as we enter into this space, I'm just going to ask us to hold our heart, take a breath, and allow our heart to become a drum. And with this drum, I wanted to take us to a place, a memory of joy. What does this joy look like in your body? How does joy rise up in your spirit? What does joy sound like when it hits the back of your neck or your shoulder? Does joy jump out at you? Does joy start at your toes? Give yourself a space to imagine the color of joy, the sound of joy, alongside your heartbeat, your drum beat. As you immerse yourself into this place where joy is alive, pay attention to who's there, what's going on, what's flowing in the world around you, what's allowing this joy to get loud or quiet. As you immerse yourself there, choose one sound that represents that memory. Is it a clap? Is it a laugh? Is it a giggle? Big sound, small sound. We'll give ourselves some space now to immerse ourselves and look for that sound of joy. We'll take 3 more breaths. Allow the joy to come in your body, allow it to be here, however it shows. All right, thank you. Thank you. We're gonna open up, and I'm gonna ask us to, if you can, take a second and write just a sound. What is the sound that came to mind for you? We started off with a heartbeat, which is also a drum beat. We're going to talk a lot in metaphor because we think it's a very important way for us to move in the work that we're doing with our feelings, with our heart. I want to invite everyone, if you can, to think about a joyful noise. If you want to think about it that way, what is one sound? It might be a drum. It might be the sound of a person in your life. So as we move into this space, and it's a beautiful segue to understand that grief and joy, they are on a continuum, they flow, they talk to each other. And it's so necessary for us as we engage with our hearts to trust that, to know that one is not the only or the end of it. So we're going to get started just really thinking about, oh, we have some great other sounds in here. The sound is ah, but like when you take the large sip of cold liquids on a hot summer day. Beautiful, Christina. The pop when uncorking a bottle of wine. Who knows about teacher happy hour, okay? Or adult happy hour, there's a little joy there. So thank you. Please continue to put your sounds in the chat as we move through this space together. So we're gonna go into the next slide. And as we go into it, Emeka and I, actually, we come to this work really through a deep friendship that started in joy. But also with grief, right? And we were searching for these answers, and oftentimes we're able to talk through metaphor. And so we want to offer this dialogue as a space for us to really engage across metaphors that have been useful for us in feeling heavy grief, feeling intense joy, and recognizing how valuable it is for us to connect our humanity to nature so that we can be whole in our process of getting to know ourselves. So we're going to ground this workshop really in our experiences together in Mozambique, learning about local knowledges and the ways that they also conceptualize feeling the heart as connected to drum, connected to music, connected to emotion and feeling and culture and freedom. So we're going to start off with heart as, so when we think about refuge, we think about refuge as a site of protection, a place of safety and belonging. So we also want to honor that a heart is a space that we can inhabit. And we can move forward as heart as a flowing river. So if we think about heart as not just a space that is stagnant or one space, but something that's moving, that we can actually engage with and start to actually shift the energy and the flow and what comes in and comes out.
And for those of us who work, in the sciences or even in anatomy, thinking about the chambers of the heart where the atrium and the ventricles have particular roles. So the atrium is what receives blood and the ventricles are what pump blood out. And so that's how we're going to be thinking about the flow of blood in our heart as well. What do we allow in and what do we receive in? And then what do we allow that to then push out of us as well and emanate into the world beyond?
And through this, we think about heart as a space where we can have intergenerational dialogue, heart as a place where we can sit and slow down and both adventure, but also sit and be in a place of accountability in regards to what's coming in and how can we address how we're showing up in classroom spaces, how we're moving through the world, what are the ways that our heart are shaping the ways in which we're in relationship to ourselves and others.
And one of the ways we want to also explore that too is to think about Noor and I are feelings people. We encourage people to feel. The goal of life for us is to understand feeling to the best of our abilities, but we also recognize that there's side effects to feeling as well. And so learning how to not be consumed by feeling so that we can also move with it and live alongside it as well. So we're going to talk about that as well, kind of avoiding the trappings of the heart as well.
And Stephen, you're right with us. We're thinking about the chambers. We're going to collage the chambers of the heart. So you're with us. When we're thinking about the flow of blood, we're also using a metaphor for water as well. So thank you. Perfect. So we can move to the next.
We have a set of objectives that we wanted to we're really excited to have this presentation with you all because Noor and I are both former classroom teachers, always educators, and are thinking a lot about our experiences in the classroom and what we needed at the time, particularly as early career teachers, to process our own grief and to process our own experiences as educators, but also as thinking and feeling people in the world. It can be, and I imagine that many of you can attest to this as well, it can be really challenging, at least I know it was for myself, to be a beacon of hope for my students who I'm in a position of influence over during times when I don't feel hopeless. And so having to perform hope and optimism in moments where I actually feel incredible despair and grief. And so really just especially thinking about, for example, when I was teaching when Michael Brown was murdered and dealing with the the kind of intense grief around that experience, but also the compounding grief of like experiencing police violence and other forms of violence back to back. And so really just wanted to structure a presentation or workshop experience where we can sit with that, the challenges of being beacons of hope and optimism for students when we don't necessarily always embody that and feel that ourselves. One of the other things too is we're often sometimes socialized to normalize dysfunction, normalize trauma without effective strategies for processing the grief of those experiences. And so we wanted to also create a workshop experience where we could use art and think about our different toolkits. How can we tap into our networks, our creative practices to help us process through difficult feelings and to stop normalizing the dysfunction and the trauma that we're taught to just accept as what it is.
Right. And both of us spoke a lot about, and I think I'm also feeling this when I'm paying attention to the chat and folks who are sharing now, that we're moving through roles that oftentimes folks are asked to have a straight face or a serious face, or to kind of brace ourselves in the face of intense trauma or a repeated kind of violence against ourselves or our students. And we recognize that that wasn't sustainable. That's not something that allows us a level of freedom, and even more, it doesn't give a pathway or a space for them to be able to also release, for us to do this as a community. We are all impacted. And so these practices directly come out of our experiences of having multiple students pass away or lose their life to violence, and recognizing that this is like a regular reoccurrence of needing to tend to the feelings, the emotions of what it means to do this work, honestly, given the context to which we're doing it. So we'll move to the next. Oh.
I was going to say too, Noor and I also both really subscribe to the idea of critical hope. So hope that's rooted in truth and honesty about our lived experiences or lived realities. But in that experience, when you are teaching students about the realities of the world around you, we also have to hold the fact that there's a heaviness to knowing and there's a heaviness to feeling that we also want to be able to move them through and move ourselves through as well. And so we want to kind of work around that with you all today too through this presentation. So normally when we're facilitating conversations that are really personal, can be really emotional, can be really triggering in certain ways, we just think it's helpful to have a set of norms so that we can kind of hold the space in a way that everyone feels like they can show up and be them full selves and show up and also just feel safe to share what they need to share and to learn in the ways that they need to learn. And so we just have a few norms here that, you know, we want to run through. The first is being fully present, recognizing that there's a lot happening in the world outside of us.
And then just to be curious and open-minded, we're going to jump into doing some art. Mush offered us so many beautiful questions and so many provocative images. And now it's really a time for us to shift into y'all giving us your perspective, to mine for images that are reflective of where your heart is now, the things that you need for your heart. And so a part of that is to just be curious and open-minded in the process of creating, which we already are doing so beautifully here today.
And along those lines too, just listening deeply and processing, really just trying to practice listening to understand, not necessarily to respond or to defend oneself, but to just really understand where your feelings are coming from. Why am I having this particular reaction? Maybe am I interpreting this in the way that I actually think that they might be intending, et cetera. And so just really practicing sitting with yourself in this presentation and also sitting with the words of what people have to share.
And also a big piece that we always share is like just also being respectful. We love to share these norms also because I think they're such a necessary kind of grounding for any type of creative work that we do, recognizing that there's so many things that will come up. So in that process, allowing folks to be creative, to shift and do what they need to do, but also be mindful that we're in a community.
And just the last is speak from the I perspective, to try to avoid as much as you can generalizing and overgeneralizing, and speak from the truth of your experience, even if you do believe that that experience is universal, to really try to ground your thoughts and opinions and perspectives in your own experience. So we're gonna actually just read a poem with you all and just process it a little bit. What is coming up for you as you're hearing and just processing the words of this poem, but also what is flowing in and out of the heart of this conversation that's happening between the two perspectives in the poem as well. So we'll just get it started. Unbound in ways that felt familiar, distant, and unknown, a younger version of myself appealed to my conscience. They asked, ever curious,
How do I, black as night, remain light in spite of all this knowing?
Sincerely, I replied, I fear that I, lost in real time, have troubled your joy with troubling thoughts about a troubled world. Forgive me, for I wish that I knew what I did not yet know about the heaviness of knowing. We might never rediscover what was lost in transformation, but on your quest for life, liberation, and the pursuit of wholesomeness, be kind to yourself. Kindness will empower the heart to remember what love looks like in all forms. Part of what I hear when I reread this poem for myself too is like some regret on the part of the elder in the poem about one of the things I was talking about with my therapist recently is also anger empowers the heart to remember certain things, and anger being a defense mechanism that my adult self has for my inner child.
And so what I love about being educators and therapists is we're always finding different ways in which to engage in ways that feel relevant to the folks that we're working with. And then you also get to learn a lot. So the atrium is what's flowing in. The ventricle is what's flowing out. So we're going to build a collage activity, and we're going to give you a couple ways in which to do it. Definitely want you to flow in what ways feel best for you. But we're going to be asking really for you to be able to ground into basically a couple questions around where is your heart right now? And the question that we often check in around is like, do you need a refuge right now? Are you in a place where you feel just overwhelmed, tired, exhausted, and you need space to imagine and create space for whatever refuge looks like for you? There's also another question. Do you need a flowing river right now? What is flowing in and out of your heart right now? And how does it flow? So that's going to be one of the questions that we'll offer you. And we have instructions and other kind of supports to get you through this. So don't worry, you are held in this. And then you also are able to hold a space like what we just saw in the poem was an intergenerational dialogue, right? Which is oftentimes happening in our work when young people are asking us questions, and oftentimes they're looking for a critical truth. They're looking for critical hope. They want both us to be able to hold both. And so we want to create space for us to also collage our heart to recognize who we're carrying with us as we do this work. Thinking first, starting with yourself, what images are most needed given the status of your heart right now? So thinking of what came up over this whole session, what do you want to like visually represent to take with you, to represent where your heart is? And so we give a couple options. Heart as refuge. Do you need a refuge? And I start with Chimoyo, it's actually Little Heart as a town that really helped us to learn a lot from local and indigenous communities around what it is, what the heart means. So this is a space where you can go ahead and share a little bit about what your refuge looks like, feels like, smells like, tastes like, who's in it, what do you do there? And you can use whatever images you like. Then we also have the other question is like heart as flowing river. Some of us talk about the exhaustion and the tiredness we're moving through. So we're going to ask you, is your heart flowing from the past, present, or future? Are you holding on to past grief or heaviness that's with you? Or there's something that you want to let go of? So the question is, what is polluting your river? And that's what's flowing in and what's flowing out of you. This is a radical accountability moment of maybe I'm holding a lot of anger and I need to find a way to move through it, transform it, alchemize it, like Amber shared, right? But I need to name it first. I need to name that it's here. So let's put a place for that. Then what is restoring your river? Because we understand all of these things are happening at the same time. So allowing you some space to write in what's flowing out, and using images to do that. And then if y'all are interested and you're sitting and you're like, oh, I actually had some interesting conversations with some young people and I'm struggling with how to kind of navigate some of these questions. We want to offer a space to collage, thinking about what is a question that a young person has asked that resonates or has challenged you to answer, which feels like almost my everyday in regards to my emotions and how to move through it. So giving yourself a space to sit with that and engage both from your younger self, recognizing that they're within us, and then also honoring the adult self who is here with us today. And then the last is, and we have some questions that you can peruse through if you need help. kind of like getting an idea around the collage. And then the last one is y'all choose your own adventure.
These are some of the primary texts that we were drawing from. And I know, just to speak to the Freedom Dreams one, it really is, what I love about this text is it's Robin D.G. Kelley talking about how we often know what we're fighting against, but sometimes we forget to think about what we're fighting for. And so the importance of visioning and envisioning and thinking through vision. So
the emergent strategy is a resource that I think everyone on this on this role, if y'all haven't already read it, but engage with it again, there's so much wisdom, to the point of, I feel like it's a reflection of a space like this, because she calls on so many teacher, educators, brilliant minds like yourselves who are here to share out their wisdom. And so one of the pieces around the heart flowing, she shares a lot around, like, are we asking ourselves, like, what time period are we in with our heart? Like, what are we bringing with us, right? And asking us to really have this radical accountability in regards to how we move in the world, but also have so much vulnerability and beauty. And then the last is just a short, really gorgeous article that I highly recommend, since we are also, I know folks have shared about families and really our intergenerational connection, but a mother really listening to the way that her son tends to his heart in his non-traditional way, and him being a teacher. So we center this recognizing that there's so many teachers in our worlds, and really it's about our ability to slow and recognize who's right in front of us. And sometimes it's through stillness, and sometimes it's through loud, raucous joy. And a lot of the research that I do also recognizes the way that joy is policed in a very particular way within Black bodies, but particularly marginalized folks' bodies, and how we're oftentimes needing to have that space of release, that space of being full. So these are some great texts, and we'll also share some other offerings as well as the questions, the instructions, if you want to take this activity to another place. And so it's a little bit of a teaser, but for you to just mine into your own experience and build some cool questions as we navigate in this work. So thank you all. We really appreciate your time and all the beauty, because my heart just kept opening up looking at the images. So
thank you so much for this experience, for Noor and Emeka. I'm really sitting with an empowered sense right now, given the space to create what I want my heart to look like and feel like, what I want to allow in it. Yes, and I love that idea of just an entryway, right? Just a beginning. But hopefully we've all had the felt sense of slowing down and of becoming more than aware, but really attuning